If I were to go around the room and ask you, how many of you people like going to school? And Riley left and she would have her hand. Really? So many people? Wow. All right. I didn't think that many hands would go up. In the first service, it kind of wasn't so many. Then if I asked what your favorite part of school was, Pastor Bob's not in here. At the first service, I was worried he was going to say recess. What was your favorite thing about school? Lunch. What? Oh, computers. Okay. Watch, we're going to get Riley when she comes in. Hey, Riley, what's your favorite things about school? So many things. Oh. Okay, recess was my favorite thing too. So going to school was actually kind of fun because we got to hang out with our friends, right? We got to eat lunch with them, and we got to learn a bunch of cool things. My favorite subject, by the way, is history. Don't test me on it because I probably don't remember anything now. But the absolute worst thing that I didn't like was when the teacher said, okay, there's going to be a test. Anybody with me on that? Oh, good. I'm so glad. We're going to do some exercises today. I'll be having everybody raising their hands. But see, I loved it when we studied in class. That was fun. And I loved reading in the history books and just reading about our past. But when it got time for the test, I got all nervous, all worried about, am I going to get the right answers or anything? Anybody else do that? Nobody else was worried about getting the wrong answers. Okay, I wore the dunce cap. But tests are a part of our lives, right? And God tests us too from time to time. Why does he do that? He loves us so dearly and wants us to grow in grace and in the knowledge of him. That's why the Bible tells us we should rejoice when being tested. Now, how many of you, when you heard the word test in school, got all kind of nervous like I did? Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad. Yes, it wasn't just me. So, by the way, after this, there's going to be a test. Just kidding. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 tells us this. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So why do seemingly bad things happen when we're looking only for good things to happen in life, right? Why does God allow us to struggle when he could make life so easy for us? Because faith without testing is useless. We need tests. I know you don't believe it. We need tests in our lives. I hope you do get that. We all need tests in our lives, in our faith. What kind of faith does it take when everything goes our way? Now, understanding that our faith grows through the trials we face is the key to accepting our problems and for us to grow from them. When we face a trial in our life or a test in our life, we have two choices we can make. The first choice is to trust God for the best possible outcome. The second choice is to believe that all is lost, like it's over. I can't do this. That's where I was on the tests in school sometimes. Not all the time. Sometimes I got the answers. Somebody's laughing. I'm with you. Once we learn to trust God in everything, no matter what's happening, we allow him to do it on his time and his way, our faith is going to grow. This morning we're going to take a look at two prophets from the Old Testament whose faith in God made a huge difference in the lives of other people around them. These people's lives that they were speaking into were having their faith tested in different ways. The first one is Elijah. Now, I said the name Elijah, so we're going to see what do you think of when you hear the name Elijah? What comes to mind? Shout it out because, honest to goodness, I can't hear anything. Go ahead. The chariots of fire, taking them to heaven. There we go. Anything else? Prophet. Who said that? Thank you, prophet. Yes. Anything else? The what? See, I told you I'm deaf. Oh, yes. Yes, he outran. Absolutely. Sorry. I really got to hear better. It's not football season either, so I thought I could hear. Anyways, How about anybody think of him on Mount Carmel when he called down the fire and the prophets of Baal? You remember that? Not on them, but do you remember though? Yeah, I'm going to trick you today. No, I'm going to test. No, I'm not testing you. When the prophets of Baal were saying that their God was the God, and Elijah was saying, why don't you call out to him? They had an altar made. They put a sacrifice on the altar and call out to your God and let him show that he is God. And over, they were crying out to a point where Elijah was just mocking them, saying, maybe he's sleeping. Maybe he's out somewhere. And they tried even harder to get their God to answer them. And Elijah called down fire from heaven, and it took the whole altar and the sacrifice and the water in the trench. See, that's the kind of God that we serve, that shows himself. He shows that he is the true God. Now, also, somebody said that he was taken up into heaven, right? Kelly said. So there was another man in the Bible that was just taken up to heaven. And this is the point where everybody's going to go, oh, wow, now I got to think about this. There was another man who was taken up to heaven that didn't die. Oh, you guys know. You got me. I was going to say, so this is the homework for the week. If you don't already know, and anybody who didn't hear it, that's good. You have to look and find out who the other man was that was taken up to heaven before, without dying, okay? Now, homework was another part of school that I didn't like that just came out. Dan, I'm sorry. I know you're a teacher. I take that. I'm sorry. But Elijah truly was a great man. But before we look at the life of Elijah, let's look back at what was happening before he came on the scene. King Ahab was ruling Israel. He was married to Jezebel. And between the two of them, they wanted everyone to worship Baal. They didn't want anybody worshiping God at all. 1 Kings 16:33 tells us what Ahab was like. Ahab also made an Asherah pole and did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than all the kings of Israel before him. He's the worst of the worst. There was nobody who was against God more than Ahab. So what did God do? He sent Elijah, right? He sent Elijah on the scene. Now, we don't know where Elijah came from. We don't know about his background. We don't know his family life. We don't even know when he was called into the ministry. But he just shows up. And what does he do right away? He confronts Ahab with his idol worship. See, Ahab had the courage to stand up for what he believed in. And a lot of times, that's what's missing with us. Do we stand up for the truth? I hope that we do. But the outside influences around us sometimes make it difficult, right? We know that people need God. We know that there are so many people that have never even heard the name Jesus. Are we standing up for the truth, though? That's the important thing. Listen to the words Elijah said to King Ahab. Now Elijah the Tishbite, 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1, I'm sorry. Now Elisha the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, as the Lord the God of Israel lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. See, Elijah was telling him what was going to happen in the future. It was going to be a great drought, severe drought, where people would clearly see that there was one God in control of everything. It was clear evidence that he was the God. The autumn and spring rains and the summer dew was what they needed to keep the crops growing. That wasn't going to happen. But God threatened to withhold these sources of water from the land if the people turned away from serving him. So do you think that Elijah was one of Ahab's favorite people? Elijah's message made King Ahab really angry, and it was not safe for Elijah to stay in Samaria anymore. Elijah had to go hide in the raven, I can't read. Wow. In the ravine east of the Jordan River and make his home by the brook Kerith. Now, the brook is what's called a wadi, a stream bed that flows with water during the rainy season and dries up when the weather turns hot. So let's just read in 1 Kings chapter 17 what actually happened. In verse 2 it starts, "Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, 'Leave here, turn eastward, and hide in the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there.' So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook." I think it's pretty cool. I wish I would have thought about this. I said this in the first service. It would have been really cool if we had a bird fly in here. See, visuals are what gets people's attention, right? I don't have a bird today. Does anybody, Steve, do you want to flap your wings and bring a cracker up or something? That would be pretty cool. But see, I think that's what stuck in Elijah's mind too, this visual. And if I had a bird fly in right now, you would get it. That's how God provided for Elijah. That's pretty neat. That twice a day, they would bring food and water. Now, I've been trying to watch for birds out here like crazy, and I have not seen any birds that have brought anything to our house, have they? They haven't even taken our bird seed out there. But next time, if we have another service like this about the birds, we're bringing a real bird in. The drought continued and the famine spread throughout Israel. Eventually, Elijah's own water supply dried up. Verse 7 says, "Sometime later, the brook dried up because there had been no rain in the land." Now, Elijah couldn't stay in there any longer, so what did he do? He was instructed to travel out of Israel, go 100 miles to Zarephath, which was the center of Baal worship. Now, Ahab didn't have control of this area, but Jezebel's father did control this area. So he was going into hostile territory, really. But God told him to do it, and he did it because he knew God would take care of him. Verses 8 through 11 says this, "Then the word of the Lord came to him, 'Go at once to Zarephath in the region of Sidon and stay there. I have directed a widow there to supply you with food.' So he went to Zarephath. When he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. He called to her and asked, 'Would you bring me a little water in a jar so that I may have a drink?' As she was going to get it, he called, 'And bring me, please, a piece of bread.' See, what he didn't understand at that point, this widow was in dire need. She was starving already. And he probably knew. I mean, God probably told him. But God had already instructed him to go there and meet this widow. And so he simply asked her for basic needs. Listen to her response. I love what she said. Verse 12. "As surely as the Lord your God lives," she replied, "I don't have any bread, only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. I am gathering a few sticks to take home and make a meal for myself and my son, that we may eat it and die." Now think about those words the woman used. She said, as the Lord thy God liveth, surely lives, right? It tells us this woman was a woman of faith in God. She trusted God, even though she lived in this land where Baal worship was so prevalent. People, that didn't happen much. She may have been a refugee from Israel, or she may have learned about the true God by some other means, but we know that she believed in God. Do you get the sense here in the story already that God's going to do something really cool, really big, something really special? I want to see what happens. Verse 13, Elijah said to her, "Don't be afraid. Go home and do as you have said. But first make a small loaf of bread from me, from what you have, and bring it to me, and then make something for yourself and your son." Now remember, she only had that little bit of flour and a little bit of oil. And the woman knew that if she did what Elijah wanted her to do, that it would cost her everything. Everything that she had. She didn't realize that God was testing her faith at that time. People out there need right now. But they need more than just physical needs. They have spiritual needs. And we have a supply that we can share with them, right? And we should be sharing with them. But what did she do? She did exactly what Elijah wanted her to do. Because God was testing her faith through Elijah. Elijah said this in verse 14. This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: the jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry until the Lord sends rain on the land. See, God had other plans to provide for Elijah and for the widow and for her son and to sustain them. Now, you may be going through some kind of trial right now in your life. And I'm going to tell you the same thing that the widow found out, that God will help you through it. He will provide for you too. He will sustain you no matter what you're going through. All you have to do is call out to him. You know, a lot of times we get to that point where like, I just can't go on. Well, you're not meant to do it alone. We just talked about that. In our prayer time, we talked about we carry a lot of things with us all the time, and we are not meant to carry those things alone. Give them to the Lord. He will help you through them. See, the widow was only seeing from a limited perspective, but God had something really big going on. So what happened? The widow responded to this test of faith and did what Elijah had said. God honored her faith by providing a food supply for her and her son and Elijah for many days. Verses 15 and 16 says this. She went away and did as Elijah told her, so there was food every day for Elijah and for the woman and for her family. For the jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry, in keeping with the word of the Lord spoken by Elijah. See, it talks about our daily needs, right? They were her daily needs. And God supplied her daily needs and her son's daily needs and Elijah's daily needs. How many of you have ever relied on God for your daily needs? Yeah, I hope we all have. I hope we all have. We need to. He will not fail you. And even though Elijah was a courageous man, I think his faith was tested from time to time too, especially when it looked like God's plans for him seemed almost impossible. After all, who heard of being fed by ravens or depending on a poverty-stricken widow for daily sustenance? See, God took care of them. So I'm asking you, is God testing you today? Is he testing you in any special way? There's a story I want to share with you about this lady named Louisa Steed and her husband. They had this 4-year-old little girl, and they lived in New York City. One afternoon in the summer of 1890, Louisa packed a picnic lunch for the family, and they all went down to the beach, and they were playing in the sand, watching the waves come in. Mrs. Steed said to herself, I can't believe how blessed I am. God has given me so much, a wonderful family, this husband and this beautiful little girl. She said, my cup runneth over. And she started thinking about how she got to this point in her life. Louisa was born in England and had come to America in 1871 on a visit with her family. She was deeply moved by a speaker's call for young people to volunteer for missionary service in China, and she decided to go. But she couldn't go because she had health issues. Later, she met her husband, and God blessed him with a beautiful little girl. Now, they're on this beach, and Louisa looks out, and she sees this little boy out in the water. He was out beyond the breakers, and he was having a really hard time. He was fighting for his life, trying to get into shore. And she called her husband, and she pointed to the boy, and the boy said, the man said, take care of our daughter. And he dove into the water, not caring about his own self, but caring about this boy. And he got all the way out there, and he put his arm around the boy, and he started bringing him into shore. But what happens when someone is worried about drowning? He fought back. The boy was struggling against the man, and Louisa watched as her husband and the boy were pulled under the water. And then they came back up one more time, and they disappeared in the water completely. She ran and grabbed her daughter and hugged her tight, and she just was crying out to God, help me, help me. Later that evening, they found the body of Mr. Steed, and it just completely destroyed Louisa at that time. The next few weeks were dark days. She was heartbroken for herself and her little girl. She thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to go on? And she started reading her Bible. She started reading how God had taken care of so many people in so many great ways. She started going back to the old hymns that she sang in church. And she remembered those words and the peace that she got from those words. See, they didn't have Social Security back in those days. They didn't have any way to help this family out. And one day when her cupboard was just about completely empty, she cried out to God. She was praying, God, you got to help us through this. And what do you think God did? You think he helped her? I think he did too. The next day she found this basket of food out by her door, and she found this envelope full of money to help raise that little girl, to get her the daily things that she needed. And this just peace came over Louisa again. And she wrote these words. Tell me if you've heard these words before. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word, just to rest upon his promise, just to know, thus saith the Lord. Say them with me if you know them. Jesus, Jesus, how I trust him, how I've proved him o'er and o'er. Jesus, Jesus, precious Jesus, oh, for grace to trust him more. God is so good, isn't he? And the fourth verse of that I want to share with you from that song has gotten so many people through some really difficult times. Listen to these words. I'm so glad I learned to trust thee, precious Jesus, Savior friend, and I know that thou art with me, wilt be with me to the end. Isn't that powerful? I know that he's going to take care of me no matter what I face, no matter what I'm going through today or tomorrow, God's going to get me through it. Isn't that just exciting to know? Doesn't that just give you that peace over your whole soul? See, Elijah and the widow of Zarephath and Louisa Steed all believed that God would provide for their needs, and he didn't fail them. He took care of them. And that's how our faith should be. Always believing, always trusting, and always knowing that God will never fail us. Now, I promised you a second prophet, and we're going to talk about Elisha really briefly. Elisha was the successor to Elijah. You remember when Kelly told us that Elijah was taken up into heaven, Elisha took over. And we find this story of Elisha in 2 Kings chapter 6, verses 8 through 17. Listen to this story. This is really good. Now, the king of Aram was at war with Israel. After conferring with his officers, he said, I will set up my camp in such and such a place. The man of God sent word to the king of Israel, beware of passing that place because the Arameans are going down there. So the king of Israel checked on the place indicated by the man of God. Time and time again, Elisha warned the king so that he was on guard in such places. This enraged the king of Aram. He summoned his officers and demanded of them, tell me, which one of us is on the side of the king of Israel? None of us are, my lord, the king, said one of the officers. But Elisha the prophet, who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. Go find out where he is, the king ordered, so I can send men and capture him. The report came back, he is in Dothan. Then he sent horses and chariots and a strong force there. They went up by night and surrounded the city. When the servant of the man of God got up and went out early the next morning, an army with horses and chariots had surrounded the city. "Oh no, my lord, what shall we do?" the servant asked. Listen to Elisha's words. "Don't be afraid," the prophet answered. "Those who are with us are more than those who were with them." And Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." Then the Lord opened the servant's eyes, and he looked and saw the hills full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Now, I love that story because it speaks of how if we have God at the center of our lives, we're in tune with his will, that he's always directing us, always leading us. You know, I like to pray every single morning, "Lord, thank you for giving me the breath of my lungs. And today, I know you've got something special planned for me. So use me as you will. Take me where you want me to go. Bring me into people's lives or bring people into my life that I can speak for you. Help me to show them who you are." You know, and I get the picture of this with the armies all around him. Can you imagine that servant? Here's the servant. I'm going to bring it out here again. Here's the servant. And all around that servant, I know it's crude, all around the servant are these armies. All around Elisha and him are these armies. And sometimes I feel that's us in this world that we live in. I feel like we are surrounded by all this evil in our world, and it's us at the center. And we're supposed to make a difference. It's supposed to be different. We're supposed to take the truth out into the world so that this gets smaller and the knowledge of the Lord gets larger. That's what we are supposed to do. Are we doing that? Are we reaching our neighbors next door to us? That can be tough. Some of our neighbors can be tough. Are we reaching our friends at work? Are we telling them who the Lord is? In this story, I love how God was protecting them just like he protects us in our time of need. See, the servant was facing a time of testing of his faith. What he didn't see was God was doing something really big in this situation. See, the man's faith, not only was it being tested, he had to make a decision. Would he trust God in this scary time? Does that sound familiar? Like, have you ever gone through a time in your life where you're like, things aren't going well, something comes just out of the blue at you and you don't know how to respond? Have you ever felt that way? In reality, we know how to respond, don't we? If we're believers, we know how to respond. We need to just trust God, and he will get us through that. We sometimes wonder if he's going to help us through that, though. We wonder if he's even there sometimes, and I know I've been there myself at times. See, it's easy for us to be like this man and see with our human eyes when we face those storms in our life. But when we have God at the center, things are going to be so different. We'll see from a different perspective. We see that he's always going to take care of us. We see that he always makes a way. There's a song about God making a way. Do you guys know that song? God will make a way when there seems to be no way. God works in ways that we cannot see. Riley's going to come up and sing it in a minute, I think. No, sorry, Riley. Put her on the spot too much today. He will make a way for me. He will be my guide, hold me closely to his side. With love and strength for each new day, God will make a way. God will make a way. Remember those words. No matter what you're going through, God will make a way to get you through that. Wow, we're moving fast today. Why does time get going so fast when you're just enjoying what you're doing? We should trust God with our todays, our tomorrows, and everything in our life. Let me just say this before I call the team up. I love the words that Elisha said in that parable. One more time in verse 16. And listen to the passion. I think this is how he said it. Don't be afraid. Those who are with us are more than those who are with them. He wanted that servant to get it, to understand that God's going to take care of them. Many times our problem seems so overbearing, so insurmountable. We're blinded by our circumstances and our problems and our troubles and our own narrow vision. We don't see what God is doing. And that's okay. We still need to trust him. We're not always going to see in front of us what he's doing, but we just need to trust him no matter what. So, as the team is coming up right now, let me just say this. Remember how the widow handled her test of faith? Remember how God met her needs? Remember how the servant handled his test of faith? And I think God met his needs too, right? The same God that helped them is the same God that will help you through what you're going through today. Will help me through what I'm going through today. The question is, will you trust him? Will you trust him?